Okay. Good morning. How is everyone? Good, good, good. This meeting is called to order. Courtney, if you could please call the roll.
Certainly. Chair Moss,
Present.
Mr. Surdich,
Here.
Mr. Velasquez,
Here.
Ms. Wyant for Treasurer Mott,
Here.
Mr. Seeley for Controller Cohen,
Here.
and Ms. Peralt for Director Stevenshaw.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Item 2 is our approval of our June 15, 2026 meeting minutes. The minutes from the meeting were held on June 15th, were included in your committee packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
None for me.
All right, sir? Okay. Seeing none, the minutes are approved as presented by unanimous consent. Thank you so much. Well, it's great to see everyone. Happy summer. Welcome to our August meeting of HDFC, our Housing Development Finance Committee, Executive Committee, double committees. Really excited to welcome and recognize our new members to the Executive Committee following our recent budget trailer bill updates that expanded our committee's membership. In particular, I want to welcome the State Controller and the State Treasurer and their delegates. Thank you so much for being here this morning to the Executive Committee. I really believe that their participation brings important fiscal and financial perspectives to our committee's work and strengthens our ability to really align our housing and finance goals. So really thrilled to have you all. Also want to acknowledge the non-voting members, including a representative from the Department of Finance, as well as our forthcoming city and county representatives who will be appointed by the Assembly and the Senate and will offer really important input and guidance to HDFC. So thrilled to have them join us as well. Really looking forward to working with you all. We are in the midst of this work. We began our meetings under statute in May, and so really excited to have the additional committee members to help us drive our agenda forward. Wanting to recognize that we have quite a lot to discuss today. So lots has happened since June. In addition to our new committee members, we now have formed the new California Housing and Homelessness Agency for the state of California, and the components of HDFC to really implement a one-stop shop for subsidy bonds, 4% tax credits is really taking shape. So really excited to preview a lot of those items for the public today. We have 3 substantive items on our agenda, each focused on establishing our structure and priorities for HDFC as we move into implementation. First, we will discuss and take potential action to amend the HDFC charter that will reflect the most recent budget changes. Next, we will discuss and potentially approve HDFC's 2026 work plan, which really builds on Executive Director Klein's 100-day sprint, 90-day sprint, whatever that was called. And finally, we'll receive an update on the status of the first draft of our HDFC regulations. Taken together, these are sort of the building blocks of HDFC, so really excited to dig into this conversation with all of you. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Courtney, to move us to our next item.
Certainly, we can move on to agenda item 5? 4. Executive Director comments with Director Klein.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Moss and committee members, for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the activities of the Housing Development Finance Committee since your last meeting in June. I'd like to add my warm welcome to the new members of the committee and tell you how excited the staff is to be working with each of you as you lend your powerful experience and expertise to advancing HDFC's crucial mission of making California's housing finance system simpler, faster, and more transparent. Since the committee last met in June, the staff have been actively working on several key initiatives. We will discuss these in more detail when we review the work plan later today, but I do want to highlight 3: drafting the regulations, staffing up the team, and actively expanding our stakeholder engagement. First, regarding the regulations, the team is very hard at work on the intricately complicated task of merging other programs into one consolidated set of regulations. This demands bringing those other regulations into the HDFC draft, identifying what is universal and what is statutorily required, what may be redundant, and what may be removed while respecting program requirements and other factors. I want to thank the team very publicly for burning the midnight oil as we advance this essential endeavor. We will talk in more detail about the regs, and I will be joined by Assistant Deputy Director Tim Parham, who's leading the effort as we work towards publishing the first draft at the end of this month, followed by 2 rounds of public comment and a public hearing, and returning to you for what we hope will be the adoption of the final set of regulations in December in anticipation of issuing a NOFA in the first quarter of 2027. Second, on staffing, as many of you know, I had the honor of swearing in Angela Kim as HDFC's first general counsel on July 7th. Angela brings a powerful blend of deep understanding and experience with how legal has worked at the state in the past, and a robust commitment to innovative thinking about how we can do better. She's been a terrific thought partner on the team and has brought her sharp mind to the granular details of drafting the regs. I'm very grateful to have her with us. We do have other key positions that are vacant, and we're working with agency to fill those roles. It's been very encouraging to me that talented, experienced people with whom I have discussed opportunities at HDFC are excited by and drawn to our mission. Finally, we've launched a robust schedule of stakeholder engagement. Many people in our stakeholder community are unclear on what HDFC is and what we aim to accomplish. So it is incumbent upon us to define HDFC. These live stream public meetings that we're having today with materials uploaded in advance are hugely helpful. I've also been meeting with boards of directors, various advocacy groups, and having conducted and will continue to conduct individual stakeholder meetings with more scheduled over the weeks and months to come. Additionally, we have a packed calendar of panel presentations at the Fall Affordable Housing Conferences. We expect this level of stakeholder engagement will increase with the release of the first draft of the regulations for public comment August 31st. Later today, we'll discuss the work plan that goes out to the end of 2026. I want to assure the committee that the work plan is designed to advance the mission statement that the committee adopted at its first meeting in May, which is to make the system simpler, faster, and more transparent. The mission statement remains our North Star, and I look forward to discussing with all of you how the work plan advances that mission. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have as our discussion today moves forward.
Thank you, Director Klein. All right, we are now moving to item 5, discussion, recommendation, and possible action item to amend the HDFC charter. I'd invite Director Klein to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moss, members of the committee. This charter amendment aims to do several things. Our goal was to clarify roles, reflect recent statutory changes, and make sure the charter accurately describes how we operate today. The charter now draws a much clearer line between HDFC as an organization and the HDFC Executive Committee itself. That distinction wasn't always obvious in the previous version. We've strengthened the language so that each body's role, scope, and authority are easy to understand. We've also updated the charter to align with the trailer bill signed in early July, which formally established the California Housing and Homeless Agency. The bill also transferred the Executive Committee to HDFC, and HDFC now functions within the California Housing and Homelessness Agency. The revised charter captures this updated governance structure, so there's no ambiguity about where the Executive Committee sits and how it operates today. In addition, the Executive Committee membership section has been refreshed to incorporate the statutorily added positions. The committee now includes, as we have discussed already this morning, the State Treasurer, State Controller as voting members, and the Department of Finance, as well as new representatives from a county and a city as non-voting members. Overall, these updates make the charter clearer, more accurate, and fully aligned with current law. and our operational, reflect our operational reality going forwd. With that, happy to take any questions and may also invite HDFC General Counsel Angela Kim to chime in as needed.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from the committee? Great. Well, thank you so much for providing these updates. It's really helpful to provide clarity in this moment as we get our work underway, and I think the public appreciates it. We certainly appreciate it. And I also appreciate having the red line version to illustrate what changes were actually made to the charter. So thank you for that. This is an action item. So we will be opening this up for public comment. Before we begin public comment, I want to note that we have an accommodation policy. All speakers will have up to 2 minutes to speak. However, if a speaker is a non-English speaker or requires an ADA accommodation, we will provide twice the standard time, which is 4 minutes, to ensure that everyone has a full and fair opportunity to provide public comments. Total public comment time will be 30 minutes. Long time. Please make sure that if you have comments, that you avoid repeating those. If you hear the speaker before you reflect your comments, please just agree that the previous comments reflect your own. Courtney, is there anyone who would like to make public comment at this time?
If any members of the public would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please come forward if you're here in person, and if you're participating remotely, please raise your hand virtually. There's none at this time.
Thank you. I'd love to ask for a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2603.
Move to approve Resolution 2603, Executive Committee Charter.
Thank you. Director Velasquez, seconded by Director Surdich. Courtney, if you could please call the roll.
Chair Moss,
Aye.
Mr. Surdich,
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Wyatt,
Yes.
and Mr. Seeley.
Yes.
Resolution 2603 is approved.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now moving to item 6, which is also an action item, discussion, recommendation, and possible action to approve the 2026 work plan for HDFC. I'd love to have Director Klein speak at this time.
Thank you, Chair Moss and members of the committee. As you take up consideration of the HDFC 2026 work plan, I'd like to make a few introductory comments. At the June meeting of the Executive Committee, I presented a draft outline of a plan for HDFC's first 100 days. With the passage of time and progress made on various fronts, it seems appropriate now to take a longer view to the end of the year. This discussion draft plan before you today details HDFC's key goals and objectives through the end of 2026. For the benefit of the new members of the committee who were not present in June, I'd like to repeat some of the context of the plan. First, it builds heavily on years of work done by the state team, stakeholders, and others that laid the foundation for HDFC. This is a tremendous advantage enjoyed by HDFC. We are a startup, but we do not need to spend a lot of time conceptualizing what we need to do. We have clear direction from the community, from stakeholders, and others. Our work this first year needs to be about implementation and execution. The goals in the plan, for example, should look very familiar to anyone who was involved with the 519 Working Group. I should mention that yesterday, the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee held an oversight hearing on the implementation of AB 519. I testified along with Directors Velasquez, Director Surdich, and Director Wyatt. I discussed the plan with the committee in general terms at a high level, and it was very well received by the Assembly members who were heartened to see their legislative intent coming to life in the work of HDFC. The other foundational work this plan builds on is the HDFC mission statement adopted by the committee at its inaugural meeting. As you all know, HDFC's mission statement says that to alleviate California's affordable housing crisis, HDFC creates affordable homes by making California's housing finance system simpler, faster, and more transparent. That mission statement is our North Star. The plan strives to drive our work forward to make that mission a reality. Third, to that end, the plan articulates 4 goals: coordinate multifamily housing finance, accelerate the process from application to conversion, measure progress to achieve continuous improvement, and enhance trust and transparency. I think about that as an acronym of CAME: coordinate, accelerate, measure, enhance. I presented a draft outline of a shorter plan, as I said, in June, and the committee endorsed those 4 goals. I know that some of the new members of the committee had not yet been added, of course, when the June meeting was held, and I welcome your thoughts on those 4 goals that will guide our work and on the entire plan. Now, on to the plan itself. The enclosed plan before you builds on that draft outline in many important ways. As I said, the committee concurred with the goals, and they remain unchanged, as do the objectives. A reminder that the goals are long-term and the objectives are short-term. The work plan expands on the draft scope presented in June by including tasks and timelines. Please note, as was the case with the draft, some objectives appear under more than one goal. That is not an oversight. Objectives may appear more than once if they support the accomplishment of more than one goal. I do want to stress this concept of making the system more transparent. Reflective of that, a public comment period was opened to invite opinion on the work plan outline presented in June. HDFC received 1 comment letter from Resources for Community Development, a Berkeley-based nonprofit affordable housing developer. The enclosed plan includes a recommendation made by RCD in their comment letter calling for HDFC to include a companion piece when final regs are issued to define policy goals, intended outcomes, and priorities. The RCD letter is included in your meeting materials. I call attention to this because it really embodies our commitment to walk the talk about enhancing transparency and not simply go through the motions, but really implement what we're hearing from the community. This HDFC team will provide an update on the work plan at each monthly meeting. I look forward to our discussion of the plan today. And I'm happy to go straight to your questions and comments or walk you briefly through the plan.
Do you all want to have them walk us through the plan? How's that? Or go to comments?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Why don't you walk us through the plan?
I will.
Thank you.
And I'll try and be brisk.
Take your time, sir.
More of a jog than a walk.
I promise I won't sprint to the finish line. So as discussed, the plan in a lot of ways reflects kind of strategic planning 101, right? There's goals, and then there's objectives to accomplish those goals. Goal number 1 is to coordinate multifamily affordable housing finance. Objective 1A is the draft HDFC regulations, which we will be talking about in greater detail shortly. We've agendized the regs because they are so foundational to our work. They really merit a separate discussion. But as I alluded to earlier, the team is hard at work on that, and we will dive in there later in the meeting, again, with the goal of getting a draft out for initial public comment at the end of this month. We'll talk more about the timeline and get to a final in December when we come back to the committee for a December meeting. More to come on the regs. Unified calendar for application review and award. Again, we are actively speaking with our colleagues across the agencies to identify a coordinated calendar. Again, as the objectives are detailed here, in the interest of time, I won't walk through every step of every objective. But we think we're in good shape to have this really pretty much ready to go in October. Objective 1C, the draft application workbook, obviously an important part of AB 519. We anticipate having a skeleton of the workbook done this month. And then we do have a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a catch-22, but this workbook can't really be done until the regs are done. And so what you will see in a lot of these objectives working towards year end is we want to get the basic building blocks in place, but we really can't press play until the regs are done. That doesn't mean we're going to wait until December, but we are actively working on a lot of these. Advancement of the application portal, again, is moving forward. And the process of reviewing applications, we are absolutely working on starting to identify team members. We anticipate a lot of cross-training happening as part of that process. And again, will be largely implemented by the end of the year. Accelerate the process from application to conversion. The first objective is to enhance upfront technical assistance for applicants. This appears under the faster goal because what I've learned since starting this position is some of the lag actually comes on the very front end. As people apply, there's problems in the application, they need to reapply, and so on, and the clock is ticking. So part of what we're working on is a more robust pre-application technical assistance program so that when people come in, they're really ready. In my view, if we have a pattern of people who are not really ready when they apply, I think that's on us to provide the support and direction so that those applicants are really ready. So it is part of our faster objective. Objective 2B, creating a pipeline management system. Again, we're working in conjunction. I mentioned some of these objectives are overlapping because they accomplish more than one goal. This one gets back into the application portal and the dashboard that we'll talk about in a minute. Calendar, again, as we discussed, I think we're well on our way. The bottleneck identification really will be advanced by goal 2 and goal 3. The concept here is once we get the technology in place, and this obviously won't happen until after awards are made, which likely is about a year away, we want to make sure we have the capacity, and some of the team has heard me describe this many times. I do think about this as a conveyor belt. On the front end, applications come in. On the back end, closed loans go out. And so the question is, on that conveyor belt, where are there snags and how can we address those bottlenecks? What I have found working on process management in other places is that very often the snags and bottlenecks aren't occurring for reasons other than that people need more support and direction in doing their jobs, and that people want to do their jobs well. And so what we want to do is really identify in a sort of blame-free way, if you will, where those bottlenecks occur, and then make sure people have the right support and training and direction so that we can alleviate those bottlenecks. That won't happen this year, but again, we can start to put the pieces in place. Let me move on to objective 3, measure progress to achieve continuous improvement. This, again, we talked a little bit about pipeline management to track projects, and then I want to make sure that early on in our process, we're benchmarking early. Candidly, I'm concerned if we get a lot of early wins, we won't know unless we're benchmarking early. And so I want to make sure we're being thoughtful about understanding what status quo is as opposed to after improvements. Last goal, enhance trust and transparency. It has been interesting to me as I have done various stakeholder engagement meetings. Stakeholders really focus on this goal probably. The goals I hear the most about are goal number 1, because people are very focused on the regs, understandably, and then goal number 4. And so, what can we be actively doing to enhance trust and transparency? I referenced, how seriously we're taking the public comment we got in the draft outline. We have a very active, calendar this fall. I will be on many panels with some of you at the various conferences. We want to work towards tracking our work plan progress in a very public way on the HDFC website, if the committee does choose to approve and adopt this plan. And another, topic of conversation is compliance monitoring. Again, part of what came out of the 519 process and GRP 2025. And so, again, this year I expect to be identifying a team and implementing planning. Let me stop there, but that's a very fast overview of the work plan and what we hope to do between now and the end of the year.
Thank you, Director. Questions and comments? Director Sertich?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Director Klein. I know that's a very ambitious 100 days or I guess maybe a little more than 100 days now, but I know there's a lot of work to do, and been working with a lot of the members that are working on this, of your team, as well as some of the folks at the other entities, including Cal HFA. I just want to continue to support this effort and continue to let you know that, or please reach out if you need additional assistance, because it is all hands on deck here to make sure this works and we get this moving. We all have workload constraints, but I think that moving this forward and getting as much done by the end of the year is super important, and just want to let you know that we support that at Cal HFA, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if I might, Chair Moss, so I just want to stress the level of cooperation and support across, the entire housing, agencies, Cal HFA, HCD, the Treasurer's Office, and so on, has been enormous and enormously welcome. And I think people do see this as a team effort, and that, we need all members of the team, pulling on their oars. I think the plan is important to me because I think it does clarify, the direction that we're trying to row in. And what's most important, there's a lot of other things that we could be focused on, but this plan out to the end of 2026 hopefully really clarifies the priorities of what we're trying to do. And I appreciate the support.
Thank you. Director Velasquez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo what Director Sertich said about any additional support from our organizations. Please reach out. I think I agree the timeline is very ambitious in a good way. We are aggressively pursuing these goals. But I think it's important for the members of the public, for everybody to understand that you are putting forth an aggressive timeline. At the same time, you are actually building the organization and hiring the staff to do this work. Like you're doing this concurrently. In government is, I mentioned this in the previous meeting about, things doesn't always move as quickly, and I think everybody, especially our stakeholders, need to be mindful of that you're doing that concurrently. Which brings me to a point in the plan about the application portal, which you have a launch date of December for it. Is that meant to be a launch for testing the portal, or is that meant to be a launch after testing has been conducted? Do you know?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Director Velasquez. Let me speak to your first point first and then your second point second. So the phrase I oftentimes use is that at HDFC we are flying the plane while we're building the plane, which is always exciting. But to your point, we are standing up this organization, filling staff positions, defining policies and priorities. At the same time, we're trying to move the work forward. I don't think there were ever any illusions that the idea is we would, take 6 months to put together a long-term strategic plan, but we were going to just go, and so we're going. And I appreciate you recognizing the challenges inherent in that. Regarding the portal specifically, again, as we kind of sort of do a little bit of mini backwards planning, if we want to get to awards, say a year from now, roughly, late spring, early summer of next year, we're putting out a NOFA Q1 of 2027. If we want to be in a position to put out a NOFA Q1 of 2027, we really need to have the pieces in place to do an application portal. So our expectation is that we can absolutely have the application portal ready to go and tested by the end of the year. And I completely hear what you're saying. I think the phrase that Director Sertich used at an earlier meeting was appropriately ambitious, I think, not to put words in your mouth. And I totally recognize this is appropriately ambitious, but the team and I believe we can get there.
Okay. A second, thank you for that. A second quick question is on the public comments for the regulations. Are you expected to have the second public comment in November shorter then the 21-day comment next month, I think.
Yeah, so our schedule is still a little bit in development. We know we are required to do a full 21 days of public comment, and we are thinking a bit about how those two public comment sections will occur and where we embed the hearing as well. And when we talk in a minute or in a few minutes about the regulations, we can cover that in more detail.
May I? I think because it's in this work plan, that needs to be more specifically spelled out. I think under the rulemaking rules, when you make a notice of rulemaking, that is then when the draft goes out, and you need the 21 days in public hearing between that and any then subsequent change. So I think there's a question of if you do an initial working draft, if that is different, it's not a notice of proposed rulemaking, and you do a working draft, in which case the 21-day comment period doesn't technically apply there. It would be in that for the actual rulemaking package.
That's hugely helpful, Director Wine, thank you, and I can consult with our General Counsel, Angela Kim, to make sure that we're following that precisely. I appreciate that very much. Thank
Yeah, so I just would want to make sure that it's appropriate and clear in the work plan that we're approving, that it is properly meeting those rules.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Please.
So, first of all, this is a lot of work that you have done in a very short period of time. Finance has the honor, I'll say it that way, of being involved in a multitude of boards and commissions, and I've had my share of walking through long-term strategic plans and annual business plans. So first of all, just commending you and the team for putting together something so quickly and quite honestly, comprehensively between now and the end of the year. As we all are aware, this reorganization was a high administrative priority. It continues to be. And so I think our ability to put something out that moves the needle quickly on some of the sort of, for lack of a better terms, low-hanging fruit that we know that it has been as a result of conversations, whether it's been with the work group or otherwise, I think will be key to the success. But, I wanted to just uplift, and I think we had the opportunity to talk about this when we first met, but just the continued eye on the transparency element. I think what I have heard in kind of multiple spaces and multiple, serving on multiple boards, is just sort of the stakeholder or the public's interest in housing has been varied, and we know it's something that I think has been a frustration. We've had some pain points, as we all are aware, that stakeholders run into, and I appreciate you kind of hitting the nail on the head with one of them about just this idea of providing technical assistance. I think that's going to be so key for our stakeholders to really understand this new process as we start to change it, that they come alongside us and don't feel like something has been changed and it's just being directed at them. I think that's going to be something we just have to be mindful with. So I appreciate you making sure that in at least even this short-term plan, we have addressed some of the transparency and making sure that there's multiple opportunities, whether it's under the regs piece or otherwise, that we continue to find ways to engage stakeholders. Because we might be thinking we're over-communicating something and it might not be, it might not be landing as we think it is with our public. So I appreciate that being in this space. And then this is maybe a longer-term question, and the answer can absolutely be, I don't know, because we're just trying to, as you say, fly and build the plane at the same time. But is there a sort of a timing to think about once we get through this year, working towards a longer-term strategic, I'm thinking, 5-year, 3-year, 5-year plan in the traditional manner? I don't know if that's something the team has been thinking about. And again, maybe it's been a conversation already here in this with this group, but first meeting, so just playing a little catch up as well.
No. We have not discussed that, and it's very much on my mind. So let me just speak to it quickly. And let me just make a point also about stakeholder engagement. As Chair Moss and others know, I have tried to be very strategic in my stakeholder engagement. Candidly, not everybody supported the reorg, not everybody supported the creation of HDFC, and I have tried to do double duty, connecting with those folks in particular, to really address in a very open, transparent way some of those concerns. They're out there. We all know everybody doesn't agree on everything all the time. But I think that's part of when I said part of what's incumbent on us. I also, the idea of these four goals, coordinate, accelerate, measure, and enhance, I repeat again and again and again. And the committee's mission statement, I repeat again and again and again. And I'm waiting for the day when at some point I will be at a stakeholder engagement meeting and somebody will say, yeah, we've heard that before. But it's not, we're going to have to repeat what we're doing here all the time. So appreciate the point and very well taken. In terms of longer-term planning, absolutely want to do that. There are resources available to us to engage in a more elaborate, if you will, strategic planning process than we've had time to do. Again, HDFC didn't exist until July 1, and we're, implementing a plan to get out to the end of the year. But I am inherently a very planful person, as you've probably figured out. And so I absolutely want to make sure we have, a compass going forward for the next year and, to your point, for the years beyond.
Appreciate it. Again, I think you and your team have uplifted a lot of work in a very short period of time, and that should be commended. And my comment about sort of the longer-term strategic plan is really more just so that I feel like there's a lot of momentum going, and I'd hate for us to lose that as we kind of move further into next year and beyond. So, but really appreciate, as a fellow type A individual, really appreciate this laid out this way. And again, it is ambitious, but it seems to make sense. So appreciate the hard work.
Any other questions, comments? I have a couple. First, just echoing appreciation for how much work has gone into the planning. I think it does give people a roadmap as to what to expect. And that we are holding ourselves accountable. This crisis is urgent, so we must act with urgency. So building the plane while we fly it is, in fact, our responsibility. And I'm just really excited that we are focusing so much on stakeholder engagement so that we can receive critical, constructive feedback in how to ultimately make our housing finance system more effective for everyone. And so it's really, really important that is reflected in this plan, and that the team is leading in that spirit, and you yourself are reaching out to stakeholders who may have a different view and skepticism. Systems are designed in which they are, and we are breaking the mold in many ways, and so we need folks to come along the journey with us, and we invite that. I'm curious about in the work plan, you describe conducting quarterly stakeholder convenings, which I think is a really great way to keep people consistently updated. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what stakeholders can expect in those kinds of convenings and how their input will ultimately be incorporated in how we think about HDFC's work.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moss. I just sort of at a high level, let me just say, I deeply, genuinely believe that great ideas come from everywhere. And so it is really important, as we are doing this work, that we're opening as many channels as possible to find and receive those good ideas. To me, the stakeholder engagement piece isn't like an ought to do, should do, required to do. It will inherently make our work product better. So I believe in it down to my toes, number one. Number two, in terms of what those quarterly engagements will look like, part of what we want to make sure we're doing is channeling comment initially on the regs. There will be lots of comments on the regs, and again, Tim Parham and I will talk more about that later today. But in terms of organizing that commentary and organizing that input, I want to make sure that in terms of formal engagement this year, it's really channeled towards the regs, in addition to all of the other, let's call them informal engagement, that will be happening at fall conferences and other meetings. I mean, every week I am invited to and accept an invitation to Zoom into somebody's board of directors meeting. And we're just doing that all the time. Starting in '27, when we've got these regs in place, and in anticipation of the NOFA going out, we will also be doing a quarterly schedule of stakeholder engagement. And my thinking there is that we will, look at both technology and regional meetings to maximize the input that we get. This gets to the point about having a plan for '27, and I apologize, my plan only goes out to the end of '26. But definitely as part of that '27 plan, we'll have a detailed game plan for how we operationalize that stakeholder engagement. Again, I see it as absolutely core to us creating the best product possible.
That's great. I also hope that the staff will consider that, the pain points that our stakeholders have experienced in their housing journey and trying to finance housing are historic. And we are, in fact, trying to target some of those pain points in the creation of this work. So I'm hopeful that you can iterate on whether or not what we're doing is, in fact, responding to those pain points through some of those engagement conversations. So really excited about that. I would also...
May I just speak to that?
Yes,
really
please,
quickly,
please.
Chair Moss? So one of the questions I have been asking people explicitly, and I've gotten some very interesting responses, is to give me your top 10 list of pain points. And as HDFC General Counsel Kim knows, one of our ongoing bits of conversation is, where are we fixing these in the regs, right? I mean, we're not just going through the motions of saying, what are the pain points? Thank you very much, we're done. We've kind of checked that box. But actually, where can we find opportunities to address those specific pain points? And as I think you all know, the community is not shy about sharing that. So it hasn't been, hard to drag that information out of people. And candidly, in addition to people raising some of the obvious pain points, and I'm sure we all know what a lot of them are, people have also come up with really good ideas. One of the pain points is that it's not what we're doing, it's what we're not doing. And can we start doing that, which would alleviate some of the other stress, which has been really interesting. And I, again, when I was in front of the Legislative Committee yesterday, as again, was joined by many of you, one of the things I really stressed is there's just a lot of really smart, creative people in this community. And we would do ourselves a total disservice by not engaging them very, very actively to be gathering their best ideas. I think, and again, I don't want the requesting for that idea to be a performative thing. I really want to make sure we're following up in the regs. No,
that's great. And to Director Wyant's point, I think if there's the draft regulation public comment before the formal rule, that is a way to sort of test whether or not we are being responsive in the ways that we want. One other question about the 519 compliance. Looks like we're kind of ahead of the game in terms of what the legislature sort of was expecting and bringing some of those recommendations to life through HDFC. Curious about how the work group or maybe the work group itself or the work it has done will continue to inform HDFC's work. I know a lot of effort went into organizing that group of stakeholders. A tremendous amount of work has happened, and as one of the statutory pieces that we follow, curious how you see that work moving forward through this work plan.
Yes, very much so. So again, as I mentioned in my introductory comments, I think the legislators we spoke to yesterday were, I would say, delighted to see that their legislative intent was actually really being carried out in a very diligent way. In terms of the work group itself, again, very, very valuable vehicle for input and direction, and absolutely envision carrying on, with that work group, including both as we move through public comment period on the regs, as well as when we think about, again, quarterly meetings and other opportunities in the new year to keep that input coming.
That's great. That's all for me. Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right. Let me see where I am. This is an action item, so we'll be opening it up for public comment. Each speaker, again, will have up to 2 minutes to speak. And again, please, if you've heard your comments provided, please resist redundancy. Courtney, is there anyone who would like to make public comment on this item?
If any members of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 6, if you are in the room, please come forward to the microphone. And if you're participating remotely, please raise your hand virtually. There's none at this time.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve resolution number 26-04.
So move.
I do want to just request an addition, an edit to this document, per my comments previously, that we make clear that there's a 21-day comment period between the notice of proposed action. So really, like the second round of draft regulations, there should be a 21-day comment period, because that's sort of when the actual rulemaking would begin.
Could we approve the plan subject to Director Wyant's proposed amendment?
Yes, please.
So in order to amend, the committee would first be asked to take up the vote on the amended version of the resolution. And if that passes, it supersedes the resolution as presented in the package. If it is not voted upon positively, then we would move to a second vote, which would be to take up the resolution as written and presented in the package.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Why don't I remove my motion and you make a motion with the amendment, right?
Yes, sir. So first, Director Wyant, I would ask for the specific language that you would like added to the reso, please.
Do we really need to amend the resolution if I'm just requesting an edit to the work plan? The resolution as it stands is the same, would be the same.
Good question. I would say yes, but we could just add a sentence that says in the resolution, work plan as amended.
Yes,
Does that work?
yes.
Okay.
So I move to approve, I move to approve the resolution 26-04 for the work plan as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Velasquez. Counsel?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Please feel free to proceed to the vote if you feel ready.
Great. Courtney, if you could call the roll.
Chair Moss,
Aye.
Mr. Sertich,
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez,
Yes?
Ms. Wyant,
Yes.
and Mr. Seeley.
Yes.
Resolution 2604 is approved.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And if I may just add, I really appreciate the amendment. It was certainly always our intent to do a 21-day public comment period, and appreciate the clarification that that is what we will do. So very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So moving to item 7, an update on the status of the first draft of HDFC regulations. Director Klein.
Thank you. I am joined by Tim Parham, who is the Assistant Deputy Director at HDFC, and really want to, again, as I mentioned earlier, call out the team for the tremendous hard work that has been done and continues to be underway in drafting these regulations. Our intent here today is to give you an overview of the process as we move towards submitting the draft regs for 2 rounds of public comment, as well as holding public hearing and coming back to you in December for final approval of the regs, laying the groundwork for issuing the NOFA as discussed first quarter of next year. So I want to talk at sort of a high level about the regs first, and we'll turn it over to Tim to walk through some of the details. This is intricately complicated work. We are taking existing programs and moving them to HDFC, as we are statutorily complied to do. We are trying to do it with great care and great thought. This is not at all a sort of lift and shift, if you will. We are looking at programs and where there are statutory requirements that must be respected. We are looking at places where there is duplication that can be consolidated. And we are also looking at inefficiencies that may just have evolved over the years that maybe we could set aside. And doing that in a way, obviously, that works for our stakeholders, that moves projects forward, is a big undertaking. And so it's being done with a great deal of care and thought. Again, the reason why this portion of your package starts with the mission statement is it is our intent here to do all of our work, keeping, as I said, the mission statement that was adopted by the executive committee as our North Star. It was enjoyable yesterday to hear at the legislative committee, the committee members trying to get simpler, faster, and more transparent nailed down. Proved to be a little bit more challenging than I thought it might be. Purpose and highlights of the regulations. Again, we are looking to advance that mission statement, reduce fragmentation, and maintain statutory compliance. As I think you are all aware, part of the root cause of so many of our problems is the fragmentation in the system. Candidly, other states don't have this problem. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is move away from a very fragmented system. I'm sure you all have heard the study citing that about $20,000 per unit is added to costs with every additional source. And you all can do the math about what that means in terms of added costs, to say nothing of the time. So we are striving to address that fragmentation and also pay due respect to our statutory obligations as we move through this drafting process. The mandate to develop these regs comes straight out of statute. And so we are directed to develop a common set of regulations and move towards the vision of a much more consolidated system. So this is absolutely a part of our legislative mandate. I want to turn it over to Tim to talk about some of the work that we're doing, and again, want to praise him and the team for all of their many hours of toil, blood, sweat, and tears that have been shed as we move forward in this process. And Tim, I'm going to turn this over to you. The bottom clicker actually advances, even though it's down.
All right. Thank you, Director Klein. Good morning, Chair Moss and members of the committee. Tim Parham, Assistant Deputy Director at HDFC. Excited to share where we are at with drafting the regs that are rapidly approaching our deadline to publish them for public comment, which we're really excited about. And so, we're consolidating universal program requirements at HDFC across 9 programs previously administered by Cal HFA or HCD into a single application for coordinated review. That means a single scoring rubric with all the statutory requirements from the various funding programs required only if those funds are requested for a project. All of these are administered through a single application process where information is shared across the state team, including from our team at HDFC with Cal HFA, HCD, and the Treasurer's Office. And this is a little preview of the table of contents here on this slide. We've organized the draft regulations into 2 primary components. One is the core multifamily standards, which apply to all programs. So these are your basic requirements, such as underwriting and those sorts of things. And then if there's any exceptions to those that are coming from statute or the way another program, a funding program has to be administered, those are going to live in the program-specific supplement areas. Go to the next one. So threshold requirements. The next 3 slides talk through a little bit about what's in threshold and eligibility requirements, what's in scoring, and then we'll get into the tiebreaker briefly. So the concept is to have as few items as possible in our threshold that are really critical to project eligibility and feasibility. And so number 1 is sponsor experience and capacity. We want to make sure that sponsors are ready to go. And next is site control, that the site is controlled by the developer applying. The project is ready to move forward to construction pending award quickly, and that's what readiness to proceed means. And then adjacent to threshold, but not the same terminology, are program-specific requirements. And so this is, you're going to sense a theme, and Director Klein's touched on it already, around the statutory requirements that each of these 9 funding programs come to HDFC with. Not inventions that we created, but statutory requirements of how the funds must be administered. Those live in those program-specific supplement areas. And an example of that is the infrastructure grant program requires specific density limits. And that'll just be if you're requesting those funds, show us that you're meeting the density requirements. Okay, next. So now we're going to touch on the universal scoring concept. So allocation is spread across targets and policy priorities, as well as geographic regions. But every project type has a pathway to earn maximum points. And this is important given the statutory complexities that are inherent in our funding programs. The scoring categories include affordability, housing types, climate, and locational priorities. And there's several, there's 4 conceptual set-asides that we're discussing right now. Rural, projects in rural areas, rehab and preservation projects, supportive housing, and emerging developers. And the considerations for funding will be sorted across geographic regions that are largely consistent with the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee's regions that's familiar to developers. So again, only 3 scoring categories with various pathways to achieve full points for different project types. We do expect we're building a model that most projects will be able to achieve full points, and so the tiebreaker consideration is important and is still under testing and final tuning before we release for public comment at the end of the month. But I want to present the concept to you today, which may be familiar to some. It's largely modeled after the CIDLAC tiebreaker system that currently exists, which assesses total state investment relative to public benefits. And you can see there that there's public benefit counted in different ways, and essentially we're combining all the state requested fund as a denominator. Moving on. So we wanted to take a beat and touch on some high-level priorities or policy priorities that exist in statute or outside of statute, and give you a preview of where we're addressing those in our regs. Affirmatively furthering fair housing is a component of the scoring and tiebreaker to prioritize projects expanding access to amenities, resources, and location-based benefits for residents. Climate friendly, VMT reducing and transit-oriented locations will be a priority within HDFC scoring. And you can see there some of the ways that that'll show up on the slide. And then again, getting at pathways for all housing types and affordability. Thresholds, obviously, that meet certain eligibility criteria for affordability, but there's multiple pathways, including targeting those with the lowest incomes in our state to provide housing for all. And then last, and no slide in this deck would be complete without referencing the statutory policies that are inherent in the funding programs that we're administering. And those are touched on both in that program requirement section, but some of those components are required to be in scoring and/or the tiebreaker. Okay. I'm going to touch on how the regulations addressed HDFC's mission, which can be boiled down to simpler, faster, and more transparent. So the first slide here is how are the regulations going to be simpler? So one is that we're moving from 9 different scoring rubrics to 1. Not counted is, CEDLAC and TCAC into that, but conceptually it's more than 9 programs into 1 single scoring rubric for a developer to consider, understand the details of, and plan for. The next is updated requirements. So the HDFC regulations will replace HCD's uniform multifamily regulations for HDFC projects and will align with the Treasurer's Office programs. And we're proposing to modernize loan limits. So no more program by program specific per unit loan limits. Instead, we'll focus on larger awards, given the nature of the mission of HDFC to fully fund projects and make it a single stop. Next, I want to touch on how the regulations will advance HDFC's mission of being faster. So it's essentially a one-stop process for accessing all 9 of these funding programs that we're administering and pairing them with programs at the State Treasurer's Office. Updated requirements. I'm sorry, I'm going back on my paper slide. Aligning tax credits and bonds, so I skipped ahead. Sorry.
You were going fast.
Yeah, it's going too fast. I was ready, which tees up my next point, which is readiness. So we're going to set up a clear timeline from award to construction start. And so thinking how the whole regulations, not just the scoring in these different components, tie together projects that are coming to HDFC ready to receive their full funding and move forward quickly. Okay, and last but not least is more transparent. There's been a lot of discussion on this already this morning, and I think one of the ways that we're leaning into the more transparent mission is something Director Klein's already touched on a couple times, is that we're gonna seek two rounds of public comment. I think these exact dates are to be determined, but it'll launch at the end of this month, the first round. And we hope to have a very transparent process. We'll be receiving comments, hopefully interactively via our website, as well as old-fashioned way to send us a letter. And I think Director Klein's referenced he won't turn down any meeting. We want to talk to folks and dive into the details, get your red lines on the regs. So where are we at right now? So a lot of the basis for the regulations stems from thinking that's been done for over a year with stakeholders directly in the AB 519 working groups. So engaging stakeholders directly there, and I really want to take a moment to pass along the thanks that that Director Klein passed on to me and the team, to our partners at CalHFA, HCD, the Treasurer's Office, that have rolled up their sleeves and been working right alongside us to draft the regulations and really conceptualize it. So thank you all. This is truly a collaborative effort, and we're continuing that over the next few weeks prior to the release, confirming legal compliance and conforming with the Treasurer's Office programs, as well as testing and adjusting, scoring and evaluation system, like I mentioned. And last slide. Okay, and then this is the overall timeline. Again, we aim to release and publish on our website at HDFC by August 31st, the first round of draft regulations. There'll be accompanying materials, and again, we hope it's clear of how to interact with that document and provide comments, followed by a second round of public comment and public hearing before we bring back to you in December a final recommended set of regulations for your approval. And I just got one slide left. That's my timer. And it does go into 2027. So we have done some thinking ahead. Here's the HDFC Round 1 funding timeline. And so, as Director Klein mentioned in our work plan, we do plan to introduce this new coordinated application portal early so that developers and applicants can familiarize themselves with that before they're under the pressure of an application due date. And then the application portal and application workbook will be published in early 2027 with applications due in April and awards in August of 2027, if not sooner. And I believe that's all.
Thank you, Tim. So obviously, happy to take questions or comments from the committee.
Thank you so much. Comments, questions? Director Wyatt.
Thank you. So first, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Director Klein. My staff has been very engaged with the process to date, so really appreciate the collaborative effort we've all been making. I do want to lift up a couple things for consideration. When I think all of this is been contemplated is in the context of HDFC awarding resources to projects, so generally thinking in the construct of new construction deals coming in for state subsidies, or rehab projects that perhaps are utilizing the PRP program. But I do want to lift up a couple other types of projects that do come in to use volume cap at SIDLAC that should be considered in the HDFC pool. The first are projects that are either previously awarded by HCD or by future HDFC that are coming in for supplemental bond allocation. So when a project applies to SIDLAC and receives a bond allocation, as you know, the 25% test is a critical point to ensure compliance and with federal requirements for 4% tax credits. When project costs go up, the amount of bonds a project needs has to also increase, and we process those as supplemental bond allocations. We often see those both at construction closing and then again typically at conversion. So I think that should be considered as a use of the HDFC pool. And then the second category are AC rehab projects that may not need PRP dollars, but perhaps are using the LPR program at HCD, or just are simply projects that want to be resyndicating that have pre-existing HCD loans in the project. Because right now at SIDLAC, we do give priority to those projects in our AC rehab pool. I imagine we're going to have a much smaller AC rehab pool in the future because of these changes, and so just another way to sort of add a certain category of projects within the HDFC pool.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Director Seeley.
So this was great, and I really appreciate the presentation and getting the money out the door. I had a question. Are your regulations, will they be covering the monitoring aspect, or how is that going to be handled?
Yes, the short answer is yes, and still, along with other parts of the regs in development, but my personal perspective is 20-plus years in banking, and that asset management function, obviously, in addition to the compliance piece, but also the financial performance piece, is something I absolutely see HDFC be deeply involved in going forward. And I would just overlay that with a comment, which is my professional opinion is that there is right now a tremendous amount of stress in the affordable housing portfolio for a variety of reasons. I think we don't need to touch on it. We can if you want in this meeting. And so I think that makes the compliance monitoring piece more urgent, twinned with the financial performance piece to really understand how projects are performing over time. That's a long-winded answer to your question, which my answer just should have been yes.
And then linked to that, there's been a kind of an evolution of this topic, sponsor control, sometimes it's called. I was just wondering, do you have any fresh perspective or different perspective on, commonly you have someone come in, they get an award, right? And then later on, they form a special purpose entity that gets the actual funds. Any view on that? Is there going to be any changes there? Fresh perspective at all?
Yes, and General Counsel Kim and I have been talking about this a lot. And part of our initial thinking, and please jump in and correct me if you think I'm off base here, we need to understand, I think, internally, and I think this is a bit to your point, that there is a very conventional form of structure here, which we see all the time and frankly have since 1986 when the tax credit program was first created. There is nothing, in my view, my professional opinion, exotic about it at all. And so we need to really make sure that all parts of our organization understand the sort of, if you will, plain vanilla structure issues, and not treat them necessarily as things that need to be overthought. Obviously, we need to understand, if you will, forgive me for falling back on my banking language, but who the counterparty is, who's on the other side of the table, and make sure we're very, very clear about who those folks are. But I think at some points there has been a little bit of overzealousness, if you will, about really understanding some of those control issues. And I think we can do a job in these regs of really defining how we think about that and how we process that and what we look for to confirm that when we look at applications.
Director Velazquez? Yes? Oh, nothing for you. Oh, Director Sergich, please.
Thank you. One thing I really appreciated, I mean, this aligns with the 100-day plan, or again, 110-day plan, whatever we like.
2026 plan.
And thinking through, getting these regulations out and making sure that we are on time. One of the things that, Director Klein, you said earlier that I think is really important we keep in mind as we're working through these is that we do have a large community of very smart, bright, capable partners out there that we can leverage their thoughts as well. So I think it is important that we continue to move these forward and get them out for public consumption and take that feedback back and integrate them into the thing. So I do encourage you to, as much as we can, to help continue to meet those timelines that you've set so that we can get that feedback and get these completed as quickly as possible.
Yes, thank you, Director Sergich. If I might speak to that for just a quick second. So I know August 31st will be here tomorrow, essentially, but we are very committed to meeting that deadline in terms of that first draft. My plan and expectation is that first draft will go out with a cover letter from me that will explain to the wider community that we don't think this is a finished product. And that has always felt, speaking personally, a little risky to me, but I think that is a really core part of the transparency piece and the faster piece. And in that spirit, say that the reason why we are putting out an early draft for comment is because we really want people to comment. We're not presenting something that's a fait accompli that we think is all done, that we think is perfect. And so, again, the tone, I hope, that HDFC is setting is one of openness to comment, and that includes inviting that comment in as quickly as possible so we can then be incorporating all that great thinking and feedback as we move forward to the second draft and ultimately bringing you back a final set of regs in December. So completely concur and appreciate your comment.
Great, yeah, and that goes along with the fact that I know that Tim and staff and a lot of our staff up here have been working very diligently on this, and it's just, there's only so far that group can take it without getting the public comment. So I think that we do need to, at some point, sort of just say, all right, here's what we got. Give us what you got back for us.
I'm sure the comment will be robust.
Any other comments from the committee?
Just one more.
Please.
Being somewhat familiar with the programs here, I was wondering, do you have a view towards an evolution of possibly ever supporting construction financing as part of your role?
Well, we've been in conversation with Director Sertich's team, given the capacities at Cal HFA. And so yes, we absolutely see the potential for that to be part of HDFC's work, and would need to be doing it in partnership with our colleagues who have a well-developed capacity to manage construction risk. And so it is absolutely part of an ongoing collaborative conversation. You know, honestly, this isn't just words. HDFC is all about collaboration. And we can be stronger when we work better together. And so absolutely, construction, I think, could be in the picture going forward.
If I may add
Please.
to that, the reason I sort of smiled when you said that is this comes up every time we ask. We had a hearing yesterday. It is something that Director Velasquez and I have talked about significantly over the last several years, last several months. It is something that Cal HFA has in our 3-year strategic plan to really move forward on developing a more robust construction lending program that we can then use to support HDFC and other programs that are involved with developer-facing financing. So yes, it is a high priority of ours.
And if I could just amplify Director Sertich's comment, at the hearing yesterday, there were 3 panels. The third panel was comprised of 3 developers, and one of them in particular was citing really punishing numbers on construction costs, and what a difference maker it would be if the state could come in sooner to manage some of those costs down. It's a very live topic.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments from me. I just want to echo appreciation for the staff, for the collaboration of not just your team, but our HCD colleagues, Cal HFA, our treasurer colleagues. We couldn't have gotten to this moment without that. And it's not just collaboration, as you said, Director. It really is integrated support to make this process happen. And it's evidenced in many ways. We're building on it by the hearing yesterday and the 519 work that's been going on for years. The MHP gap NOFA that the Controller's Office and HCD have been working on. So it pleases me as the Secretary of CHHA to really see that we are functioning as an ecosystem. That in fact, the way in which we break up some of the fragmentation that these programs have created by design, frankly, their statutory requirements, their administration requirements. We're creating this complex new system that really does integrate all of those components into one. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that it is not a small lift to draft these regulations and harmonize what has been years and decades, frankly, in the making. So just want to express some gratitude for all of our partners who have been working to get us to this point. I also wanted to lift up something that you said earlier in terms of kind of going deeper on our policy goals. I really appreciated the letter that was sent in from RCD that really talked about having a companion policy document that helps both the public and our staff across state departments really understand the why and who we're actually trying to impact by improving our housing finance system. So really encourage staff to consider incorporating that in the draft regs as they are further developed, because I think that provides the sort of universal framework and understanding that folks will need to implement this work and to understand what the pipeline will ultimately deliver for California. Quick question about the scoring. So we know that our developer partners will be looking to understand how the effects will best position them in their existing and future pipelines. If this unified scoring method is implemented, how will they be able to tell about their chances of success for each round?
Let me chime in first, and then I'll, Tim can correct me wherever I've gone astray. So we are in the process of doing the testing right now. We are absolutely, again, in the spirit of transparency, this is a work in progress. And so some of those answers we don't have right now. I think the whole team is very highly alert to the risk of unintended consequences. That, we want to make sure that the scoring doesn't work in a way that doesn't achieve what we want to achieve. And so that's part of the reason for a very rigorous testing program. I do think that, as part of the stakeholder engagement piece, we will absolutely be sharing scoring in a very transparent way. And again, have tried to build upon some of the existing scoring approaches that we know have generally worked for our development partners. But Tim, please
Yeah.
amplify.
Yeah, I think I would just amplify one of the slides that I mentioned, really building on what's there, and Director Klein's talked about this in past meetings, is not disrupting pipelines. And so I think that's the genesis of starting from the already exist and well publicly vetted CIDLAC tiebreaker model, which will be one of the key determinants for a developer to be able to, model with some key differences. They're testing, even right now, they could go download, a workbook off of the Treasurer's Office website and start to plug in numbers. And so we'll hope to provide that transparency and clarity, but know that that was the intent in building it from the jump, was that it's not introducing a totally brand new concept. It's building off of what exists.
Great, very helpful.
Yep.
And then, one of the elements, I think, of transformation that this opportunity offers us is not just process and program improvements, but culture changes, right? We are changing the culture of how we finance housing in California, which means that our internal cultures have to evolve, certainly how we do business today. It has been really heartening to see my colleagues leaning in to figure out how to make our bureaucracy work more efficiently, and our team members to be connected to the mission, not only of HDFC, but the mission of the departments that they work within. So I think that that's going to be a really important piece to pay attention to as we move forward in these regulations. And I invite our stakeholders and our sponsors to also think about what cultural evolution they need to be a part of as well. We are presenting in good faith that we want to transform the system, and we want to do that with our stakeholders and sponsors. So just encouraging that component of culture change, which is often the hardest to do, to accompany all of the tactical and strategic work that we need to do to move these regulations forward. My last question is really about.
Excuse me, may I just comment on that?
Yes,
very
please.
quickly?
Please, Director.
I apologize for interrupting, but as the committee has pointed out, we're moving fast here. And I've spoken with other folks who've been through many rounds of promulgating regulations, and it just doesn't happen this quickly. Part of the reason for the speed, Chair Moss's point, we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and so we need to act accordingly. But the other thing I've been keenly aware of, from my understanding, is, to your point about cultural change, why do so many change management efforts fail in the public sector and the private sector? One of the major reasons why change management efforts fail is a lack of urgency. And so part of what we are trying to do is bring to this work a real sense of urgency, that we need to move deliberately, but fast. And that is part of our effort to support your comment about how we think a little bit differently about perhaps changing some of the culture.
Appreciate that. So we touched on process improvements earlier. Is the intention to address some of those in these regulations, or does that come separately?
And in terms of process improvements such as, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm not, process improvements in terms of how we are considering requests, for example?
Yes.
Yes, yes. So absolutely, there will be process mapping that will be articulated through the regulations, so it will be very transparent to people in terms of how things proceed.
Great, that's exactly what I was wondering. Thank you. That's it for me. Anything else from committee members? All right, this is an item, action item, so is it an action item?
It is not, I
Just
believe.
kidding.
No, it is not.
This isn't an action item. But we will, it is an informational item, so we will open it up for public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Again,
There's a lot of action going on with this item.
the action's coming later, folks, just to know what to preview. Thank you so much. So we will open this up to public comment. Again, 2 minutes to speak. Courtney, is there anyone who would like to make a public comment at this time?
If any members of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 7, please raise your hand virtually, or if you're here in the room, come forward. Yes, we do have someone who would like to make a comment. Ms. Ruby Toralva Pio, I am going to ask you to unmute your microphone and go ahead with your comment.
My name is Ruby Charo Pio. I'm a KTHA, which is Kings Tulare Homelessness Alliance, over here in Central Valley, COC. I'm a member, and I want to address today's proposal in the same language government uses when public money is at stake: risk, controls, compliance, monitoring, audits, and assurance. Today we heard that ACD, Cal, HFA, HDFC, and State Treasury's Office have deeply coordinated data, policy, financing, and project evaluation to create a system that is faster and more transparent. That established an important fact: California has the institutional capacity to connect agencies when it wants to move housing dollars efficiently. We expect that same coordination when accountability for those dollars is at issue, and there is already an audit basis for that expectation. The California State Auditor has previously identified deficiencies in HCD's compliant controls, including inadequate tracking and compliant outcomes that resulted in inaccurate information being reported to the legislator. That matters because a faster system without stronger controls can simply make an existing accountability gap move faster. If I could please have an extra minute, just because I have to adjust my body.
Yes, you have 2.5 minutes still.
Okay, thank you. Kings County demonstrates why compliance history must become part of this architecture. HCD's own enforcement record placed Kings County, Hanford, Lemoore, Corcoran, and Avenel among the jurisdictions receiving housing element enforcement action in 2026. HCD reported more than 1,200 housing accountability actions statewide. Those are not allegations from this microphone. Those are state records. Yet families experience another side of this system that financially underwriting does not capture. Take Triangle Courtyard in Kings County. The records we obtained showed approximately 504,000 in expenditures reported through January 31st, 2023, which ACD treated as fiscal compliant, along with operating subsidy funding associated with the project. Those same records contemplated vulnerable households remaining in local hotels and motels through Kings County Human Service Agency with implementation proceed. That exposes a control issue perfectly. Fiscal compliance is not the same as program performance compliance. Knowing that 504,000 was properly reported does not by itself help. The fact that we did get, our family has already participated in the state process. We raised accountability concerns during ACD public process involving SB 35.2. SB 35. We raised Triangle Courtyard. We separately raised Sunrise Apartments. We saw compliance escalation and meaningful assistance. We also attempted to participate in CALFA concerning the substantial public housing funding, and our intended public comment was not delivered regarding the 40 million that were discussed that day. We are here again today at some point. Repeated public participation itself becomes an audit trail demonstrating that the state was placed on notice, and that this is why simply receiving public comment is not enough. A referral is not a finding. A forward complaint is not an investigation. Closing an agency contact was not verified. Cal ACD staff changed completely Triangle Courtyard, for example. What are we supposed to do? What assurance does the public have that Cal HF, your guys' agency is gonna make a change in this Triangle Courtyard was completely changed. It was supposed to be permanent housing, and HCD staff, they
Th-
completely changed it, and thank you, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your public comment.
If any other members of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. There's none at this time.
Thank you so much. Are there any other committee matters? We're moving to item 8, other committee matters. Are there any additional committee matters or future agenda items that our new members or any members of the committee would like to propose at this time? No? Nothing? Okay. We are now opening this item up for public comment as well. Each speaker, again, will have up to 2 minutes to speak. If you've heard your comments offered prior to your speaking, please just echo the comments before you. Courtney, is there anyone who would like to provide public comment on this item?
If any members of the public would like to provide a comment on this item, please raise your hands at this time, either virtually or here in the room. Yes, we have a few that would like to make a comment. We will begin with Ms. Turalva Pio again. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Yes, thank you very much. And there's another reason I'm putting this into the record today. Oh, yeah, thank you. And there is another reason I'm putting this on the record. This is not the first time I have attempted to participate at the state level regarding substantial public housing resource. In connection with Cal HFA and approximately 40 million in public funding under discussion, we attempted to provide public comment addressing accountability and implementation. That comment was not able to be delivered in a manner we attended. Even though our participation was later represented as being placed as within the appropriate agenda and executive committee materials, that distinction matters. Putting a public comment into a package is not the same institutional control as ensuring the decision makers actually confront a substance of the warning before public money moves. And this occurring while California's governor and legislator have been expressly moving housing policy toward greater accountability and transparency and interagency coordination, measurable performance, and enforcement of enacted statutory requirements. Those expectations should apply to the agencies administering the money just as seriously as they apply to the jurisdictions and recipients receiving it. We have now appeared in sorry. Just give me one second. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. We'll move on to our
The
next
California,
member.
the California, the California. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just adjusting my body. Sorry about that. The California State Auditor has already identified. Yeah. Okay, thank you. The California State Auditor has already identified series of weaknesses in ACD oversight. In its audit of an ACD administered program, the state auditor found that ACD had not maintained its compliant data in a manner that allowed the department to readily identify the total number of complaints of fraud, which complaints warranted secondary review or uniform information concerning compliant outcomes. The auditor further found that because State Auditor of California found that because ACD did not accurately track those outcomes, ACD reported inaccurate information to the legislator. That finding belongs in this conversation because when HDFC tells Californians that this new system will be faster, more transparent, deeply coordinated, and legally compliant, assurance has to come from controls, not promises. An agency should not be able to demonstrate success simply because its database does not preserve enough information to demonstrate failure. That is an audit control problem. If complaints are not uniformly classified, outcomes are not consistently documented, referrals are treated as dispositions, or corrective actions are not tracked through verification and closure, then the state loses the ability to distinguish between a resolved problem and a problem that simply disappeared administratively. And Californians deserve assurance that the same weakness will not be reproduced inside this new consolidated financing structure. We have already experienced why that distinction matters. We participated once again in the HCD SB 35 public process. We raised concerns about Triangle Courtyard, Sunrise Apartments here in Kings County. We saw escalation, meaningful assistance, and we're still here trying to bring this to your guys' attention. Thank you for the presentation, and I hope you guys do a great presentation. I believe in it. It's just hopefully this is implemented and we're able to succeed in this new thing. Please make something like SSI, EDD, not just that way more planning and planning and planning, can become something more solid and can even one day become nationwide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment, and we'll move on to our next member of the public, Will Sager. If you could please unmute your mic and begin your comment. Will, can you unmute your mic? Okay,
Hello, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry. Thank you. Again, I guess we're still morning, so good morning. I'd like to thank the committee for all their work and more importantly, the staff for all they've done. I wanted to make an offer that there are plenty. I'm Will Sager from Link Housing Corporation. We are, like a lot of developers, ready and able and eager to see your Excels, your portals, and help you beta test them. It's something we're excited to do so we can save everybody some more time later on. More importantly, I do want to say that we are respectfully requesting that the HC programs such as REAP 2.0 and the non-competitive PLHA be considered as HDFC eligible funding sources, along with the multifamily supernova, ASIC, the mixed income program. Doing so will expand the geographic equity of affordable housing finance statewide. And I will cede my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, and we'll move on to our next member of the public, Ileana Chiquets. Please unmute your mic and go ahead and begin your comment.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Executive Director Jonathan Klein. I'm Ileana Chavez. I'm the Director of Tribal Programs at California Coalition for Rural Housing, CCRH for short. First, I really want to appreciate and just show my gratitude, the level of effort in collaboration that has been happening and demonstrated throughout these multiple committee meetings. I definitely reckon with the comments that Director Klein mentioned about just putting some urgency in the housing crisis that California is experiencing and has been for multiple years. The fact that we do see elderly folks, senior folks getting kicked out of affordable housing because they can't afford it is heart-wrenching. And now that we're experiencing just such a homelessness crisis, not only in urban areas, but now we're seeing it in rural areas is somewhat surprising. And so knowing that homelessness is looking differently in these rural geographies. But the point that I also want to highlight a little bit more here, only because I'm not seeing it explicitly, and the fear is that if it's not explicitly mentioned, that it's going to be pushed aside, and that's our tribal governments throughout California. And it's quite unclear on where they fit in this scoring concept and throughout just the threshold and the requirements that you guys are drafting. And I already have concerns that we will be replicating similar mistakes that have been done through various programs under HCD, under Cal HAFSA, under Cal ICH, under TCAC, where multiple barriers were put in front of tribes and they had just so much effort that they needed to put in and so much money to put in just to apply. But we're willing to work with y'all. We've been in these spaces with y'all. I really appreciate the level of collaboration and listening that you all have been putting. So just looking forward to continue that work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Here in the room, we have a commenter. Please come up to the microphone.
Good morning, Marina Espinoza with the California Housing Consortium. First, I'd like to thank the committee and staff for all the work that you've done over the past several months. We know that a lot of time and energy has gone into advancing the items on the agenda, and we really appreciate it. As we look ahead in anticipation of the release of the draft regulations and the January update of the AB 519 report, I would like to highlight some of the issues that CHC is interested in seeing addressed, and also acknowledge that I believe discussions around these items are underway. We are looking forward to the work that will be done related to the post-award functions for the programs that will be administered by the committee, including contracts, loan closings, and long-term asset management. These items are very important to us, and we are happy to provide any input needed as the committee and the 519 work group contemplate those issues. Thank you so much.
And thank you for your comment. And there's no others that wish to comment at this time.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, public, for your comments. We are now moving to item 9, which is public comment. It's an opportunity for members of the public to address the executive committee on matters within the executive committee's authority. We are opening up this item, 2 minutes to speak. Courtney, are there any folks who would like to make public comment at this time?
Would like to make a comment on this item, please raise your hand either virtually or come forward to the microphone in the room. There's none at this time.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. Item 10 is adjournment. Thank you so much.